If you want to stand out from all the noise, you have to become a master storyteller.
Storytelling.
Storytelling is the way you build a brand.
And learning how to tell a story, quite frankly, that captures the value of your work.
So the question then is, what's your story? The world is waiting to hear it.
Storytelling. It's become one of the biggest buzzwords in the business world in the past 5 to 10 years. But let me ask you this. If someone were to stop you right now and ask, what is storytelling really? What would you say? If you're struggling to put it into words, you're not alone. It can seem like this vague, intangible concept that we know it when we see it, but it's hard to really define. And that's really the problem, right? If we can't define it, if we don't know how to use it precisely, how can we really use its power to transform our careers, our businesses, or even our lives? That's exactly what we're going to tackle in this podcast. We're going to really talk about the power of storytelling and precisely how to use it so that we can change our businesses, our brands, our lives, and leave a legacy that's meaningful. We're going to talk about the things that are really important. There's a lot of marketing podcasts and business podcasts out there, but there seems to be a lot of talk about money and income and not enough talk about meaning and impact. That's what stories will help us do. It's the difference between just stating information and communicating it in a compelling way that makes people want to get involved in what you're doing for deeper reasons than just a transaction. I've spent the last 10 years in this industry, both as a filmmaker, a business consultant. I've done marketing, brand strategy. I really just love the idea of using story to be able to connect with people and introduce value to them in a way that's difficult to do without using that superpower. And through all this work, I've been fortunate enough to see the power of a great story to capture attention and the power of a great storyteller to change lives. That's why I started this podcast. I believe everyone has a story worth telling. And when you have the courage to share it, amazing things can happen. So let's get started. I want to use this first episode to convince you of 3 things. First, your story has the power to change lives, of your own and those of who you share it with. Second, you have the courage to tell it, even if it doesn't feel like it. And third, I want to teach you the best way to tell it so you can maximize its impact. Because I don't think you're like everybody else. If you were drawn to the idea of just the title of this podcast of Storytellers, it means that there's something about it that you find fascinating and interesting. Maybe it's something that you're a storyteller right now. Maybe you're a filmmaker or a content creator, a creative business owner, or maybe it's something that you value understanding to a higher degree so you can use it to benefit what you're doing and to impact the people that you're working with. Simply put, you're here because you want more out of your life and your career in your business. You have ambitions for great things that maybe go beyond what the regular person dreams about. You want to inspire people and connect with people and leave a legacy that's worth remembering. I actually wrote a little customer persona or audience persona for this show, and I'd like to read a bit of it to you here because I think it's really important. It says, "This podcast is for the ambitious people who want more out of their life and are ready to do something about it. Entrepreneurs, creatives, regular people who know they have something extraordinary within them. They just haven't found a way to let it out yet. They want a life of purpose, contribution, and meaning. They dream of building a career, a legacy, or a brand that impacts others while aligning with their authentic selves. They seek inspiration to make a difference while becoming the best version of themselves. Again, it's for the ordinary people who believe they have something extraordinary inside." It may not always be clear what the path is to get to where you want, but if you have a clear and compelling vision for what that end destination is for you, and what it is that you want to feel like, what it is that you want to accomplish, what it is that you want to do for yourself and for others, if it's a lifestyle or if it's contribution, whatever it is that you're seeking, when you wake up every morning and say, I'm not there yet, but this is what I'm working towards today, that's what this podcast is going to be all about. How do we get there? But just because we're clear about what it is that we want doesn't mean that we're always clear about how to get it. And that's the challenge. That same feeling we get waking up of what we're aspiring to, of what we're trying to reach, also comes with maybe a little dread or stress about how do we get there? We see the path, but we also see obstacles, and maybe we see multiple paths, and it becomes difficult to understand. And maybe every day you feel like you're getting further instead of closer. And that's the real tragedy. The majority, I think it's 90 to 95% of businesses fail within their first 3 years. That's a tragedy to me because I think being an entrepreneur, being a creative, trying to take life into your own hands and really design something that you felt like you were meant to live for is such an amazing thing to be a part of. And to have the feeling of it getting maybe further away instead of getting closer, or even if you feel like you're getting closer, but the journey is taking too long, I think you should be living the lifestyle that you want as soon as possible. And there's people out there who preach patience and preach that, hey, it's going to take some time. And even though there's some value to that and there's some reality to that, I think that if you understand how to communicate and how to lead and how to inspire, you can make all of those goals happen for you much faster. We just have to learn how to do it the right way. But to some of you, that still may not be enough. We may be clear about what we want, and maybe we even see the path forward, but maybe that path is a little scary. Maybe we're not sure if we have what it takes to be able to make it to the other end and survive the expedition that we're taking. Every mission requires a hero, and heroes at the beginning of a story usually are not heroic yet. They're usually imperfect, flawed human beings that often resist the call to action and don't want to have anything to do with it. But something inside them, or sometimes someone else that they meet, inspires them to become more and reminds them that the world needs them and that they have a bigger and better meaning and a better lifestyle ahead for them if they would only take on that challenging path. And I'm hoping to some degree this podcast can inspire you to do exactly that. Remember, I want to teach you that your story has the power to change lives and that you have the courage to tell it. Even if you don't feel like you do, what you need is already inside of you. We just have to learn how to bring it out. And usually the way to do that isn't just by focusing on what you want, but understanding that there's people on the other side who need you to get there. There's something I learned from Les Brown, the popular motivational speaker, that has always stuck with me, and it kind of really lifted me out of a difficult part of my life when he said, there's people out in the world that only you can reach. That there's something special about your journey and your story and what you've been through, what challenges you've faced and what obstacles you've overcome, that somebody needs to hear, because there's something unique about the way you communicate what you've been through and how you've overcome it that will help somebody else overcome it as well. And it ends up being something where you have a responsibility to help those people who can benefit from you sharing your story. But just like I read to you earlier, the audience persona that I had, that was focused on the goals that people usually have, the ambitions and aspirations that they have. Let's dive a little deeper now into some of the challenges and roadblocks that you might find along the journey so we can figure out exactly how to overcome them. So let's break this down just like a storyteller would break down a character, okay? So every relatable character that you see, it could be a hero, could be the protagonist in any sort of book or movie you might be watching, will always have problems in three categories, which is their external problems, the internal ones, and the philosophical ones. This might sound familiar to you if you've ever read the story branding book by David Miller. And he breaks this down into what characters will go through in this particular order. So let's go through a few of what these might be so we can understand what we have to be able to identify exactly what the challenges are so we can understand how to overcome them. So let's break them down into a little bit more detail so we can do that together. Let's do external problems first. External problems are the problems that are out of our control, that are outside of us, that are outside in the world usually. And so this can be problems like, let's go with limited resources. Okay, so possibly there's not enough income or connections or networking, time, skills to be able to execute your goals. Think of it as the tools you would put in your backpack as you go along the journey so that if something comes up, you can repair it, or you can make sure you have enough water, you can have sunscreen, you can have a change of shoes or a change of socks, whatever it is that you need to be able to actually continue on that journey. So if something comes up, you have a tool to be able to tackle it. Another external problem can also be the lack of knowledge, the lack of education, of understanding what to do. We know that we want to stand out in the market. We want to build a brand, if it's personal or if it's for a company. We know we want to share what we create with people if you're a content creator or an artist of some kind. But how to do it in a way that you can actually stand out in a crowded market, that's not easy to do. Most marketing is difficult. Most marketing fails. That's the interesting thing about the industry. Think about commercials, for example. That's advertising and marketing, right? We spend money to be able to skip commercials. The whole cable industry was disrupted by the idea of TiVo, being able to record and fast forward through commercials. Now it's all streaming where you can pay to avoid commercials completely. We hate commercials. We hate ads. And yet people are getting paid hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to create content that most people try to ignore. So don't blame yourself if you're having a difficult time with your marketing and advertising strategies, because it's not easy, even for those who are so-called professionals. Now, those are some of the external problems, the things that are outside of our control. Let's talk about some of the things that are internal problems, things that we feel or think in our mind. One of those things is self-doubt. We sometimes wonder if we have what it takes to be able to go on that journey. We wonder if we're good enough, if we're smart enough, if we're strong enough. And ultimately, one of the reasons for that fear is because maybe we sometimes fear rejection, or we fear judgment, or we feel what might happen if we put ourselves out there. And ultimately, these are things that can hold you back from taking even that first step. Let's talk about another one that gets a lot of attention, which is imposter syndrome. This is a feeling of being unworthy of the position that you're in because you feel like you lack maybe some of the external things, the resources or the knowledge or the tools you need to be able to actually help people in that position. And you might be comparing yourself to others who might be in similar positions and think that they're so much more qualified for it than you are. But that's the interesting thing about story, is that a quick note on if you want to get over imposter syndrome is, maybe you don't have the same knowledge or resources or tools that someone else you're comparing yourself to has. But what they don't have is your story. Nobody has your story. Nobody has your journey, the things you've been through, the ways you've overcome them, the ways you felt, maybe some of the failures that you've had that you're still trying to overcome. No one has the inspiring journey that you have. It's unique like your fingerprint. And that's one of the cool things to remind yourself of, is that as long as you have a story where you have victories, you have value to share with anybody in almost any situation, because most people are lacking inspiration or direction in some degree. And if you have stories of where you were inspired and you were able to overcome, you already have value to almost anybody because it solves those two problems. And let's talk about the last one, which is a lack of confidence. Sometimes people are unsure if their story is worth telling, if there's enough value there. Sometimes we're afraid, and this is something Gary Vaynerchuk talks about a lot, which is we're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of what people are going to think of us. Putting your story out is so much more vulnerable than just making an ad. An ad is something you can distance yourself from a little bit because maybe the focus is on the product or the service. Whereas when you put yourself out there and you talk about your ups and your downs and your wins and your losses, that can be tough because then you're sharing something a lot more personal. And then if someone is judging you, they're not judging something external, they're judging you. And that can feel really scary. The important part here to remember is that it's worth it. If you talk about people who have put their story out there before, 9.5 times out of 10, the support and encouragement that they get is so much more overwhelming than any negativity that comes. And often you see less negativity because the people who want to support you are more likely to vocally say that in the comment section, let's say, or maybe a friend hears it from a friend, or they tell you next time you see them, hey, I saw that post that you made, and it really left an impact on them, even if they didn't comment on it. And people who are negative, even trolls, are less likely to comment on it because they know that you just showed the courage to do something that they couldn't do themselves. And it actually gives you a little bit of a barrier of protection against those people. And the cool thing about it is once you do take that first step, and you see the kind of response that you get, and you see the positivity that can come from it, and the empowerment that comes from overcoming a fear and showing the courage to do something you know was important, that can build so much more confidence for you taking the second step and the third and every step going forward. Because whenever you see results, whenever you make a little bit of progress and you show yourself making steps in the process, that's where confidence comes from. When you see the results of your courage and of your a willingness to overcome things to be able to accomplish what you want to do. Progress equals confidence. And so whenever you can do that, that's the secret. The last section is philosophical problems. Now, there's two that I wrote here that I think are really important, which is one, it's unfair that society rewards surface level success over authenticity and impact. People with genuine aspirations to inspire and help others are often overshadowed by louder voices or trends. Now, there's a lot of people who are out there who promote the surface level rewards, the money and the cars and the houses, and they get a ton of voice because who doesn't want those things? That's obviously very important, but often the people who are promoting that are promoting it in a manipulative way that often doesn't give the value that they're claiming to give, and they often don't care about making any sort of impact. They just want your money, and that to me I find to be a very horrible thing that I would really like to tackle and defeat at some point. And then lastly, it's just a tragedy that so many people go through life with unfulfilled potential. They have incredible stories and talents, and they're lost to fear, insecurity, or lack of opportunity. I don't want you to be somebody who has the potential to live that greater life and has the willingness to try to reach for it, and then not even try to reach for it in the first place. I want to make sure that at the very least, no one can promise results. I'm not going to be one of those people promising money and houses and cars and things like that, or that it's going to be guaranteed success. I'm going to preach the idea that the journey is worth it, and that anything where you're striving towards your ambitions and aspirations is better than leaving them unfulfilled in the first place. Because some of the root causes of these problems can be things like social pressure, a lack of guidance, people who are educating you exactly on how to do these things. There's a lot of motivational messages out there that might make you feel like you want to get started and do something about it. But if they're not equipping you for that journey, then how are you supposed to do it successfully? That's my concern, that if someone is giving you motivation without education, then it's really empty promises. And the last thing to consider here is what's at stake, not if you fail, but if you don't even try in the first place. You risk living a life of mediocrity, never realizing the full potential that you have of making an impact and living the life that you dream of. Because you don't want to feel regret and disappointment at the end of your life. You don't want to feel regret and disappointment, period. We constantly have opportunities on a consistent basis where we have the opportunity to show up as our best selves or to show up not at all. And we don't want to have those regrets and disappointments that build up over time. We want to defeat those because that causes even more stress and anxiety that we don't need. There's already enough stress and anxiety in the world. Let's not create more of it within us. And when it comes to the world, I have a very close friend of mine, Joey Jenkins, who ended his TED Talk with "The world needs you now more than ever." You have the power to make some sort of contribution, to do something important, to make an impact. And those things are really important because there's people out there who need you. And let's not have them not get the help that they need because you didn't have the courage to try. The goal is not to reach the peak of Mount Everest. The goal can simply be just to reach higher than the average person does. The average person doesn't make it past base camp. They try to get there and they try to adapt to the climate and everything, and they never even take the hike in the first place because they were unable to do it, or they were scared that they were, not able to do it successfully or survive their journey. Just being someone who makes it up halfway, you still get an incredible view. You still have an incredible accomplishment that most people, 99.99% of people, have never even tried to do, and you still have a story worth being told. I want to read you this last quote that I always found to really make a deep impact on me, especially the first time that I heard it, and I hope it kind of does something for you as well. It says to every person there comes a time in their lifetime, that special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which would have been their finest hour. I want you to consider that, because if we have something, if we have potential, if we have extraordinary locked inside of us and we never let it out, opportunities can come that could have been our finest moments. That could be a business opportunity, a relationship opportunity. And if we're not our best selves when those opportunities unexpectedly come, that'll put a fork in the road of your entire life's journey. And that'll cause even more of that regret that we were talking about. And we don't want to have regret. So let's make sure we are equipped as possible for any journey that life might throw at us, especially the ones that we're trying to intentionally take. Because the journey is worth it. And even if it's a little challenging, if we get a little scratched up along the way, the destination is worth it. The story of even trying to get there is worth it. And the results we'll get from even making it halfway are so much better than where we are right now. I want to play a quick clip for you by one of my favorite movies. It's a basketball movie called Coach Carter. And there's this phrase that the coach keeps on repeating to one of the players. He says, "What's your deepest fear, Mr. Cruz?" And he looks at them and he goes, what are you talking about? And he asks him this throughout the movie 2 or 3 times. What is your deepest fear? And he never knows how to answer. And then there's a pivotal moment later in the movie. The coach has been fired and he goes into the court for the last time. And he sees a group of students there that are all his basketball players. And they're all studying just like he always wanted them to. And then that same character, Mr. Cruz, walks up, steps up and recites this poem, which I think is very powerful.
Sir, they can cut the chain off the door, but they can't make us play. We've decided we're gonna finish what you started, sir.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Sir, I just want to say thank you. You saved my life.
Now that's a powerful one. I don't know about you, but that one does it for me because it really makes you think about both the reward and the consequence of not living up to your best self and not living your best life. We only get one of these things. And it's important that we really, at the end of the day, at the end of our lives, can look back and said, you know, I tried the best that I could and I lived at the absolute maximum of my potential. And you can always feel proud of yourself. Then that's one of the most powerful feelings that'll give you peace with your life. It's not necessarily did you make $1 million, did you buy that house or car, or did you get to travel to all the places you want to go to. It's even if you got halfway there, that's still much better than where we might feel like we are now. But just being able to feel proud of how you handled the journey, you showed the character and you showed the strength and you showed the willingness to be able to tackle your fears to try to accomplish something important, not just for you, but for others. There's so much pride and fulfillment that comes in taking that journey. And that's what I want to inspire you guys to do here. Because even though it's not easy, I promise you it's always worth it. And I promise you that this is a journey I can completely relate to. I talk about storytelling and I talk about the importance of all of this. And it's not something that I've always followed myself. When I first started trying to get into marketing, getting into business consulting, I was making a lot of business content. If you look at my feed on social media, if you look at my TikTok or if you look at my Instagram and you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see me write a lot of content or make some videos about marketing stuff, about business stuff and how to grow your personal brand or your company or all that kind of thing. And how do you think it did? If you had to just take a look before you looked through it yourself, it didn't do well at all. Actually, I would get let's say on TikTok, for example, I would get a few hundred views per video. And if I got 10 likes, I consider that like it did really well. And there's nothing wrong with where you start at, by the way. Don't ever feel bad about the fact that if 200 people saw a video that you made, imagine filling an auditorium full of the people who are watching what you make. You would feel fantastic about speaking to 200 people in person. Don't discount what they can mean to you, even if it's digital, because it's still real people that are seeing what you're saying. But at the same time, we obviously want to maximize our impact. We want to maximize our reach, and the amount of reach and engagement we get is a direct measurement of how compelling and powerful it is that you communicated. So it's not about the vanity metric. It's more so just a metric that tests how well you told that particular story. So like I said, when I was making that business content, it did okay, but it showed that I wasn't really connecting with people at the level that I wanted to. And so I did what I encourage my clients to do all the time, which is to lead with your story. Don't have it in the background, don't have it in the middle, don't have it out of context. Lead with your story first, and then your business message after that, because that'll be a more powerful way to connect. Because it doesn't matter if people think that they have to communicate their business message first because that's how they make a sell. But if your business message isn't getting any attention, even worse, if people are trying to ignore it and skip it, then you're not really accomplishing what the goal was in the first place. We have to capture that attention first and have a big enough audience so that when we want to offer them something that we think will give them value, we have a larger audience to tell it to. And because you created a connection, you have a higher likelihood of getting a higher number of people to be interested in that offer in the first place. That's the power of story. That's why it's so important. So I did what I was also a little insecure and fearful of doing, which is let me lead with my story. Let me lead with something that's actually important that's going on in my life. And so I started talking about my health journey. I was an athlete when I was younger. I played basketball, I played golf competitively. I was always extremely active. And then I dealt with some injuries and some health problems that made it very difficult to stay in shape. And then I got very much out of shape. I got very depressed. So I made a commitment recently. This was about 2 years ago, I believe, on TikTok, where I said, okay, I'm going to go to the gym every morning at 5 a.m., Monday through Friday, until I lose a certain amount of weight. I think I did a 30-day challenge where I was going to try to lose 25 pounds in 30 days. And I started documenting my journey of saying, hey, here's the mission, here's the goal that I'm on, here's the narrative that I'm creating, the story that I'm living actively, and I'm going to share my progress with you guys. And my very first video, I shared a little bit of my struggle. Like, hey, I've been depressed. I've been low energy. I've been struggling, but I'm going to try to push through it because it's finally time for me to take some action. And I went from averaging 100 to 200 views per video. That very first video got 5,000 views, which is obviously much more than what I was getting before. And as I continued showing this journey and more people started joining the community, getting more followers, getting more likes, getting comments that weren't just quantity, but people leaving their stories, little paragraphs in the comment section. That's how you know you're really doing something good, when they leave little stories of their own. And I think my best video got like 50,000 views or something like that, and thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. And I was really building a community of people who were interested in what I was doing, maybe inspired to some degree by what I was doing, and were trying to start to do the same thing on their own. I think my favorite comments were the ones that said that someone got a gym membership because of me, or someone started going to the gym again consistently because of what they were seeing me do. And that's really cool. If you want to talk about the confidence that comes with the journey, that's where it comes from right there. When people, you don't have to assume if you're inspiring people. They'll tell you if you are. You'll see it in their words and you'll see it in their actions. And when I had a friend come to me and say, hey, I've never been to the gym before, but I've been watching your videos and I just got a gym membership myself, that'll touch your heart, and that'll give you the motivation to keep going, because now you see that what you're doing is impacting not just yourself, but it's impacting the community you're creating, and it's touching real lives. And if you want to talk about how to change your life, there's this quote by Zig Ziglar that says, the best way to get everything in life that you want is to help enough other people get what they want. And as we said earlier, if you can help somebody with motivation, inspiration, and direction, that's what most people are looking for, even if it's disguised by these other external things. If you're able to provide value in those key areas, you're giving people basically the most valuable thing that there is, which is the permission and the empowerment to go after their best selves, to go after their best lives. And you're giving them the tools and empowerment to be able to do that. That's a privilege to be able to do. That's how I see content creation and social media. It's not a way to get attention and get famous and become an influencer. It's a way to actually create influence in a way that actually benefits people and actually makes a change in their life. That's what social media really is. It's the opportunity to impact people on a larger level that we couldn't do before this technology existed. And it's a really special thing that I really encourage people to do, because it makes you the leader, it makes you the hero in your community. And that to me is a life worth living. So as we wrap this up, I really wanted to, like I said earlier, convince you of 3 things: that your story is worth telling, to have the courage to share it, and how to tell it in a compelling way. That third thing is what we're really going to be diving deep into in basically every episode going forward, which is, how do we use the structure, if it's the 3-act structure or the hero's journey or the story circle. We're going to go through different ways to be able to tell your story, how to be able to recognize it when you see it, and be able to maybe help yourself or help your clients be able to tell theirs as well. It's empowering and inspiring when people see you show the courage to put yourself out there in a vulnerable way and provide value at the same time. So I'm really excited to be able to have you start doing that for yourself. And if there's anything in this podcast that can inspire you and empower you to be able to start putting yourself out there, to start doing it in a more vulnerable and valuable way to people, I can't wait to see the result of that. And I'm really hoping this podcast community grows, because I'd love to create a community of courageous storytellers who are making an impact in their lives and in the lives of the people they share it with. Remember, a story is a character who has a goal but is facing challenges on their way to accomplish it. And now, if you can put yourself out there as a relatable character who's facing difficult challenges to accomplish an important goal, almost anything you write or tell or make, produce, video, audio, whatever it is that you're doing, if you can follow that simple structure, I'm telling you, you're going to see changes in how your content performs right away and how much people listen to you and engage with you right away. If anything that requires communication is going to require that you do it in a compelling way so that you can actually create inspiration and get people to give you their attention, to listen to you, to be influenced by the advice that you give to them, and be willing to participate and maybe partake in what it is that you offer. Again, if you're a business owner, you have to sell your product or service. Telling a story with a valuable offer and lesson at the end is the best way to do that. And if you're a content creator, you're an artist, you're trying to get people, that's literally your job. You're trying to capture attention and keep engagement. The best way to do that is by telling a good story. And that's what we're going to be going over every episode of this podcast. We're going to talk to professionals who do this for a living. Maybe it's filmmakers, maybe it's other business owners, people who are experts in branding and marketing, who can really teach us how do we captivate, how do we capture attention, and how do we communicate in a compelling way so that we can engage people, retain that attention, and get them to partake in our offers. I feel really excited about this. I've been involved in other podcasts and other shows and other content in the past. There's something about this that I'm feeling really excited about. I'm feeling really great energy with, because I think it has the potential to really reach people and grow a community of courageous storytellers who are willing to make a change in their lives right now. I think this is the moment. This podcast is being recorded on January 2nd, 2025. It's the beginning of the year, right? New year, new me. That's kind of the motto. And even though it's an overused one, it's really accurate. Every year is an opportunity for us to have a fresh start and to try to do something important. Let's make this the year that we finally do the things we've been always wanting to do. I'm going to be here with you every step of the way. I think that we can do this together. I'm ready and excited to start this community. And I'm really hoping that you'll join us again for the following episodes of The Storytellers.